Good evening. Welcome to round 2 of the Season 10 Tier 1 GT3 Championship in AOR. We are here for a damp Zandvoort race today. Following on from the 90 minutes to start the season at Spa, just an hour race tonight. We are just running towards qualifying now. Sorry for the slightly late start. Fighting with a thumbnail that did not want to upload, so yeah, just a minute and a half left of practice and some very close times at the top of the timetables, so could be an extremely interesting qualifying here. Several people that could come out on top, and qualifying going to be mighty important here. Zandvoort very difficult to pass at the best of times, and obviously in the wet that being made much the harder. All the spray from the cars in front, and always risky to go for a move that could end in tears if you just outbrake yourself. So let's wait and see what happens as we head into qualifying in a minute. 21 drivers on the grid for tonight, so not the fullest of grids. Should be a little bit of space in qualifying. Still a shorter track, so they will be looking to get some clear air, not have the spray in front and a clear view of the track. We've got just a few cars still running around doing their last qualifying runs. So currently Tinnis, our championship leader after one round with the win at Spa, currently sitting in 5th in the practice timetables, but only 2/10 off. He'll be looking to consolidate the victory in race 1 with another strong performance here, but Jazzman looking to bounce back after the mistake at Spa. Michelin Man also up there, Coca reserve driver racing for the first time tonight, also a strong contender for the win. So plenty of excitement here tonight, and we will get the start of that once the last cars finish their practice laps, and we will head into qualifying. Bonneville, the last car to come across the line at the end of practice. The weather for this one is guaranteed to be light rain throughout. It is proving tricky conditions with the track remaining damp rather than going fully wet, so all drivers will be on the wet tyres, but they will overheat, as I think that was Bonneville attempting to do a practice pit stop, which as he comes into the pits ends the session, so hopefully he's done some practice stops before that one, as it is a tough pit entry and you don't want to be doing it for the first time in the race. So second week in a row, Michelin Man first out on track, looking to get that lap time on the board straight away, and no issues with traffic for him. Very tight in the field behind, a few drivers staying in the pits a bit longer, waiting to get themselves some clear track, but don't wait too long or the pack will be round and you'll be amongst the drivers on their flying laps as you head out for your out lap. Looks like a change of livery for Michelin Man for race 2. Much more silver car from the red he ran in Spa, so interesting there. all drivers now out the pit lane. Guido Christ last out onto the track, but well clear of the pack about to start their flying laps. On board with Michelin now into turn 1. Nice and clean, no risks taken there. Again, just hitting apexes, making sure first lap's on the board. Always tricky to push too much in these conditions to start with, just finding where the grip is, especially through this long right-hander. Very easy to understeer, round and off. Just not get on the power too early either. And then through into the tight twisty section in the middle of the lap, a little oversteer moment, easily caught by Michelin Man, but will not help the lap time there. Again, just little moments where the back end doesn't look quite comfortable. Through the last couple of corners, how close to flat is it in qualifying here? Small lift on the entry for Michelin Man. Through and across the line to set the first lap time of the session, and straight into the 39s. Tinnis immediately responds with a 39.5 to go quickest. Jazzman 3/10 back from that, as we have several more drivers coming through to finish their laps. Matthew 2 seconds off the pace for now. I'm sure he'll be a little bit disappointed in that, and Tinnis obviously not driving a cockpit cam with the windscreen wipers still definitely off on this car. Step around the final corner for his first flying lap. Where will it put him? Up to P12, so into the pack. And just a few drivers left to finish their first laps. Let's find Guido Christ, who was the last driver onto his lap. And that's up to P6, solid first lap for Guido Christ. It will be very competitive up the front end of the field from what I've seen in practice. Top 7 at the end of practice within half a second, so every one of them will think they've got an opportunity for pole position if they can put the lap together here. And Michelin Man on his second lap, closing that gap to Tinnis, but not quite able to do it. Turbo coming into sector 3 on his second lap. Didn't manage to complete a valid lap on his first attempt, so he'll be wanting to put a time on the board here. And gets to get right out of the power on the exit there, just a little bit tight through the apex. And that is a valid lap, puts him just above Devil's Armpit into 18th position. And that's fairly deep into turn 1. There is variable lines you can take through there and get away with it, but I'm sure that would have been a little bit of time lost on that occasion, and that is not the line through the right kink there, and that will be an aborted lap and back to the pit lane. Copa Original here on a lap, I believe. First race in the season for Coca, a very, very quick driver, and will be straight into the hunt for pole and the win today. Although that's not the way to do it. Commentators curse that. But I'm sure he will regroup and go around for another lap. Dacuno as well, racing for the first time this season after missing last week in that Ferrari. Will be looking to try and move up towards Adam's time, I'm sure, and take the second quickest Ferrari spot. Not looking as strong a track for the Ferrari here today, with quite a few of them down towards the back of the field. What can Dacuno do? To the line, is it an improvement? Nope, stays 15. Still 7 minutes left in this qualifying session, and second run's yet to come. As Tinnis remains out front, and once again we join a car not exactly on the racing line there. That will be another return to the pits for Tinnis to start his second run. Dennis van Eyck with a tricky first race last week at Spa. A little bit of an incident after a reasonable effort in qualifying. Ended any chances of a really good result for him. Ended up several laps down, but managing to finish the race. We'll be hoping for a bit more luck tonight, keeping it clean and seeing if he can keep it amongst the pack in Tier 1. Fighting the steering through the final corners. Keeps it nicely on track through the final corner. And we'll go again with no improvement there. And Coca Original now has usurped Tinnis for that pole position spot, and the gap from P2 to P3 just 3 thousandths as well. An incredibly close qualifying session here, with a few drivers definitely with the ability to improve as well. Bonival, quick in practice, will be looking to get further up than 10th position, I'm sure. A lot of drivers struggling through that right-hand kink down the bottom of the hill. Lots of oversteer moments. A very, very tricky corner, but just collecting the oversteer and rolling into the next corner without any major issue there for Dennis. A little bit wide of the apex into the chicane, but gathers it back up. Nice and wide into the entry for the final corner again. Not really the apex that he needed there, and wide out onto the curb, which in these conditions will not help you run onto the start-finish straight, and remains 19th once again. Leading Sunrise, looking for an improvement in time, 0.3 to find to gain a position. Guido Chris top, I was about to say top Porsche, I've missed Coca at the front of the field, so The fight for second Porsche still on, and that's Bleeding Sunrise to start a lap, I believe. No improvement if he was on a flyer that. Nice and controlled through the first sector, doesn't look to be... No, wasn't fighting the car too much, but that is a big slide through the hairpin banking onto the dunes, going up this fast section completely flat, but not really a straight. And again, almost steering left into a right-hander there to start with, so not ideal. That is the lap time there. Traffic ahead as well, which will be a concern. The slicker moves out the way nicely, but Ferrari ahead, possibly on a lap. No, pulls out the way, and that is a clear run. As we've had an improved... Oh, and that is an aborted lap for Bleeding Sunrise. We've had Michelin Man improve up to P2, just a 10th off, and the gaps for the top four are incredibly close. Whichever one of these drivers puts together the final lap is likely to take pole position. Currently sat with Coca at a 39.417. Michelin Man coming around to finish another lap. Can he improve on back-to-back laps and find anything to challenge Coca? Almost pinned to the floor through the final corner, up to the line. Another 200s found, but not enough for that pole position spot that he took. I'm trying to remember, actually. I think I might be wrong there. It was Michelin Man that took the lead into lap 1 at Spa, but it was Jazzman on pole position, if I'm not mistaken. Indeed, Jazzman took pole at Spa, so Michelin Man looking for that first pole position of the season, but several people still in the hunt. Join Don Michelo finishing a lap here. Will there be anything in this for him? No improvement of lap time, so on to his final run. Just 3/10ths off in P6 will be frustrating for him, as we've got a few drivers back in the pits now, having finished their qualifying sessions. Just a little bit of curb on the inside there, throwing the car out wide, and I'm sure there would have been a little bit time lost there, pushing very hard to try and gain the last couple of tenths of lap time to move himself up. As we come and see what Michelin Man can do on his final attempt. It's another 200ths improvement and remains P2, but might be crucial depending on if the cars behind find some time. Next across the line, JP3. No, that's a practice pit stop, and that would be why. Not wanting to do that in the race. Scott and his Porsche across the line, and that is one position gained up ahead of Bleeding Sunrise for P9. Bleeding Sunrise with one lap to respond to that still. Matthew across the line remains P17. J Turbo as well. Oh, he's jumped up to P17, pipped Matthew there. And Tinnis across the line now goes to pole position, so he's stolen it for the time being from Coca. Is Coca still on track? Coca is just coming into the pits now, so that may be pole position for Tinnis. Is there anyone that can pull something out of the bag? I think that's it. Tinnis will take pole position here, but fine margins, just under a tenth and a half separate the top four. But Tinnis takes the pole here after the win at Spa, and that's exactly what he will have wanted, to try and move forward with that championship lead. So that is qualifying over, and a very, very close and exciting session, both at the front and the back of the field. So it'll be Tinnis and Coca lining up alongside each other on the front row, Michelin Man and Jazzman just behind, the two Lamborghinis of Skov and Michelo on the third row, and then two Porsches of Guido Christ and Bleeding Sunrise in 7th and 8th. Bonival in 9th with Scott Fell in 10th, Yip in the Mercedes in 11th, Pren, a good qualifying for him, in 12th, second Ferrari there, McQuiz 13th, Devil's Armpit, CZ Adam 14th, 15th, Joe Powell, J Turbo 16th, 17th, Matthew down in 18th in the Lamborghini, Dacuno 19th, Slicker 20th, and Dennis rounding off the field in his Ferrari in 21st. So, drivers making their final setup changes, adjusting their fuel loads. This is a mandatory one-stop race with a tyre change. I'm sure the drivers will be very happy about that. With the damp conditions, the wet tyres will wear very quickly. Even in a 30-minute stint, tyre wear is a factor, so it will be a case of nursing the tyres through, not over pushing, trying to reduce the sliding on the rear of the car. And there may well be some undercuts possible as the tyres have gone off at the end of the stint, but pushing that too far will potentially cause drivers to struggle at the end of the race. As I said earlier, this weather is guaranteed. There is no changeable conditions in this race. It will be like rain throughout, so the drivers don't have any uncertainty to prepare for, but the conditions are still very challenging, especially around this Zandvoort circuit with gravel and grass right next to the track, so any mistake will be heavily punished. So just 1 minute left before we head on to our formation lap. There will be fairly limited efforts at tyre warm-up in this one, as I'm sure the tyres will be very quickly up to temperature with not too much water on the track. These wet tyres, much easier to get up to temperature easily than the dries, especially in these conditions. Tyre preservation absolutely will be on the minds of these drivers, even in the formation lap. As we see the cars dropping down off the jacks and lights coming on, windscreen wipers on, ready for this race.
10 seconds.
So, as we pull away for this formation lap, Tinnis out front, still with those windscreen wipers off, which will bother me throughout this race. Just have to avoid any onboard cameras on Tinnis's car. Actually, the wipers have now come on, so jump down the back with Dennis just to see the spray out the back of the field. Even at this pace, there is a little bit of spray kicked up on lap 1. That is going to be very much worse. Visibility down into turn 1 will be tricky. A very heavy braking zone, tight corner. We'll be hoping to see a nice clean turn 1 like we did at Spa, with all drivers surviving lap 1 there. Everyone nice and careful, even if we had a couple of incidents later in the race. And Tennis will be hoping to get that launch off the inside into turn 1 and hold the lead. Coca very much in that Porsche will be hoping to jump him and get an early gap, the Porsche being one of the worst cars for the tyre wear and the tyre temps. So the second half of the stint I would expect Coca to struggle a bit more than some of the others, but he is a very quick driver and may drive round that without any obvious effects on the pace. As we come round into the double file formation and it all slows down. Just a short distance away from the green lights. And who will take the lead into turn 1 and crucially turn 2 as well. It may be side by side out of the first corner. And up to the line. And we're away, green flag. It looks like a strong start for Coca on the outside. Tinnis just a little bit slower on that launch, but retains the inside into turn 1. Coca will try it round the outside, but I don't think the space is going to be there. Still got the nose alongside. And Tinnis takes the lead, but that's a wide moment for Tinnis, and that will be a free position for Coca as Michelin Man also round the outside into the banking. And that's down 2 positions for Tinnis. Just a slight overcommittal there, and that is down to 3rd position. What's going on further back, as we've got somebody back in the pits already, so what's happened there? Tinnis now side by side with Skov as well, so that's another position lost. Where's Jazzman in all this as well? Jazzman down a position and side by side with Tinnis. Tinnis struggling after that one moment off track, and it has put him under pressure from many drivers. So not the start that Tinnis needed. It's Pren that's back in the pit lane, so we don't know whether that was contact there or a mistake into turn 1. We were concentrating on the fight at the front. Any other big gainers or losers? It looks to be fairly as we were, just 1 or 2 positions gained here or there. Skov with a great start up into P3, so gained on both Tinnis and Jazzman, and will be looking to close in the gap to Michelin Man now and remain with the top 2. Coca got a gap of a second almost across the line out of turn 1, as we've got Matthew spun at the final corner. So what's happened there? That will be very disappointing for Matthew after technical difficulties with his wheel at Spa. It's not a good start to race number 2, and he will have a long recovery from there. Will there be some damage from the wall? Quite possibly, and also 10 seconds off the back of the pack already. As we rejoin the front, and Tinnis still heavily under pressure at the start of this race. Needs to get his rhythm, settle back in. Obviously not the start he wanted, but he still has pace. There is no damage on that car, and there is plenty still left to fight for here. plenty of different lines that drivers can take through these slow corners in the middle sector. Don Michelo trying to sell a bit of a dummy to Tinnis there. Tinnis wise to that and just sticking to his own line, knowing that Don Michelo a bit too far back to make anything happen. Reasonable run for Don Michelo through the final corner until a little touch of the curb, and that has made it trickier as Jazzman is the one on the attack coming round the outside of Skov, but a very difficult corner to go all the way around the outside of there, and Skov keeps the position. Coker just starting to stretch his legs a little bit at the front as that gap increases to over a second, 1.3. Michelin Man also a reasonable gap from P2 to P3 as Skov is a little bit wide onto the grass, but so tough to overtake here. Jazzman having to get out of it twice there, but will send it to the inside. That's a bold lunge, but has made it work. Skov accepting that that position is gone and tucking in behind, making sure he doesn't lose P4 as well immediately. We got going further down, J Turbo Deluxe close behind Joe Powell, as the mid-pack still all very close to each other, and any little mistake will be capitalised upon by the driver behind. All these gaps remaining just under a second most of the way through the field. That moment from Matthew was just through the last corner on his own. He dipped a wheel in the grass and slid off the track, and that will be disappointing for him. Just a small driver error there, but punished with a spin, and now having to work his way from the back as we have some side-by-side racing with McQuiz and Devil's Armpit, and that's McQuiz off the track. That will be very hairy for those coming through behind, but everyone's safely through as J Turbo and Joe Powell will say thank you very much for those positions, and that will have been scary stuff for McQuiz, that's for sure. Did very well to keep it in a straight line over the grass. 2 positions lost, far preferable to damage an early pit stop and the repairs. J Turbo looking very racy behind Joe Powell here. Will be looking to put the move on him as soon as possible if he feels like he has the pace and can make progress beyond that. A slight look to the inside and scares Joe Powell into going slightly wide potentially. Can he get the run through the final corner? Exit speed all important to try and get the run into turn 1. He is close, but not really close enough. And this mid-pack here all very tight. The gap from the top cars to the mid-pack seems to be 7th to 8th position. So Scott here holding the mid-pack back, struggling a little bit there through the S as well, a little bit too much curb up over the dunes. Really fighting this Porsche, trying to keep those tyres in the window. having said that, Yip is not all over the back of him, so it may be the case that that is just where the difference in pace falls in the pack. They're all very close behind. Bonneval down into 12th, having started P9 right up there in the practice times, so he'll be disappointed to be stuck in this mid-pack, but several cars to clear if he wants to get some clear air and show the pace he has. So we have Guido Christ in the pit lane as well. That's the early stop. Either damage, or that may be even worse, it may have been a crash causing a return to the pit lane, which would not count as the mandatory stop. And what's going on here? Bonneval off to the side of the track. What has happened? Was that an accidental switch off of the engine? As that's the only thing I can see as to why he would have pulled off there. Had to stop the car, restart the engine and get going again. Very, very frustrating that, but it can happen if you have a button bound to switch off your engine and you are in motion. You cannot restart the engine, so that's the only thing I can think could have happened there. Guido Christ has completed his mandatory pit stop, so it was not a full return to garage. He is looking for some clear air maybe, but those tyres are going to be struggling at the end of this race. 50 minutes in this Porsche around this track in these conditions is not an enviable task, so good luck to Guido Christ. We will keep an eye on his progress. As we rejoin further up here with Tinus down to P5 after taking that pole position. Just one mistake out onto the grass and it compounded with 4 cars being able to clear him, but looking to make one position back here on the number 10 Lamborghini in front of him. And Skov recognising the poor run he's got, going defensive early. Tinus round to the outside and late on the brakes. Won't be able to get it done there, and Skov gets it slowed down on the apex, so nothing doing for Tinus again. Further down the pack to McQuiz, who will be looking to gain a couple of positions back after his mistake on the exit of the hairpin. Close behind the 2 Ferraris in front of him. Looking nice and clean and steady, just waiting for that potential error, just trying to stick as close as possible to take the opportunity when it comes. As J Turbo very close to the back of Joe Powell there. So once again, incredibly close at points in this field. Coca and Michelin Man just clearing 2-second gaps respectively to the cars behind, but from Jazzman down to Bleeding Sunrise in 7th, really quite close, and this mid-pack is very close all the way. Scott just starting to build a bit of a gap to Yip in P9 and heading into a bit of a no man's land. Yip here either feeling the need to defend or potentially just trying to get a bit more water onto those tyres to keep the temperature down. It will be a struggle already. The tyres do get very warm in these damp conditions, and Zandvoort is a killer of tyres anyway, with the temperature never dropping. Very little chance for the tyres to cool. This battle for P3 continues with the 3 Lamborghinis chasing down the Ferrari of Jazzman. Very difficult to know who's pushing and who is just trying to maintain the tyres. We will see plenty of opportunities for undercuts if the field remains this close. Don Michele with a good run out of the final corner, but just not really a long enough straight to get anything done here down into turn 1. But Tinnis is a little bit deep and the door opens slightly, but traction on the exit is enough there for Tinnis to retain P5. Once again, very close there, but incredibly difficult to stay close enough into the corners that count. And once again, no opportunity with Skov ahead, also putting Jazzman under some real pressure at the gap, less than half a second. But no opportunity just yet to make a move. Very close into the penultimate corner. And what is the run like through the fast right-hander onto the start-finish straight? Again, close, but you would think not close enough. Jazzman comfortable to head back to the racing line into turn 1, and similarly Tinnis, no threat from behind as well. As that's a little bit of a moment on the curb as we jump back with J Turbo, and that will invite McQuiz to have a think, as behind Dacuno very wide, and J Turbo does defend. If he gets that slowed down, there will be no opportunity for McQuiz, but this could be side by side, and actually McQuiz with a run, and J Turbo gives up the position, so McQuiz back up 1 to 13th now. So once again, Dennis and Slicker sharing a similar piece of track like they were at Spa. No contact between them in the last race, as I had presumed, having not seen what happened to them, but both will be looking for a better race here today after their respective issues in that one. And quite close here for Dennis, up into the chicane. The key thing is to keep it close and get the run down into turn 1, which is one of the key opportunities around the lap. Struggling there to keep the power down through the final corner, having to take a big lift, probably slightly affected by the dirty air from in front, and that will be comfortable for Slicker again. No threat down into turn 1. Leading Sunrise now really dropping away from those top 6, so a little bit of a lonely race here at the moment, with Scott 7 seconds behind and a gap of 6 seconds in front to those battling. Bleeding Sunrise will be looking to keep those tyres in check, and you can see already fighting the car on the exit, so that Porsche really causing some issues for the drivers, with these tyre temps almost certainly higher than the wet tyres will be appreciating. So we rejoin once again the battle for the final spot on the podium as it stands. Skov able to stay close to Jazzman fairly consistently here, but very difficult to find that opportunity for the move. Jazzman, a very consistent driver most of the time, a rare mistake at the Spa race in the last round, but Skov is in place to take the opportunity if there is another mistake from Jazzman here today. More counter steer there for Skov, as we've seen many drivers having to catch little moments with the car, and once again very tough conditions, but fairly few incidents, and drivers keeping it on the track for the most part. But just dropped back a little bit here, and Tennis close behind again, so difficult for Skov to make any kind of attacking progress while still having to look in his mirrors as well. As we see in the front two, it does look like Michelin Man is reeling Coca back in very slightly. That Porsche, like I said earlier, going to struggle in the second half of these stints, and Michelin Man trying to apply the pressure before the pit stops as the gap comes down to just over a second. There may very well be an opportunity for the undercut for Michelin Man, and track position will be key going into the second stint. As we have Matthew into the pit lane as well, that is potentially the start of the pit stop phase here. Obviously Guido Christ with the very early stop, but almost certainly unscheduled that one. Matthew with the difficulties early on, first driver into the pits around the halfway mark. Obviously the undercut will not be doing a lot there, as he had dropped too far off the back of the field, and it is really a recovery race and hoping that one or two other drivers have mistakes to gain a couple of positions there. Who will be the first to jump from the front runners? There has to be an opportunity for someone for an undercut. You would imagine in that pack from P3 to P6 someone will take the risk, as we've got Skov tumbling down the order. So what did we miss there? It's down from P4 to P6, pushing too hard, potentially trying to keep with Jazzman. It still seems to be going okay. We'll try and close back up onto this pack. Doesn't look like there will have been any damage from that. Let's see if we can find a replay and see what happened to Skov there. Just out onto the curb and very nearly taking out Jazzman with that mistake all by himself, Skov. So lucky to get away with that one, but drops back into P6 and still comfortable from Bleeding Sunrise behind. Who was that? Off on the side of the road. That was Don Michaelo as well. A similar mistake in the same corner. Don Michaelo has touched that curb and lost the car as well. So Skov returns to P5. Don Michaelo now down to P6. Still no position for Bleeding Sunrise as those Lamborghinis getting away with the mistakes. But the tyres just starting to give these drivers issues. And the slightest mistake, as I said earlier, could cost big time, but those two getting away with no contact with the wall, being able to rejoin quickly and still in that top 6. Meanwhile, Bonneval is working hard to gain some positions after a couple of just less than ideal moments at the start of this race. I believe he managed to switch the engine off coming down the start-finish straight into turn 1. Had to pull out of everyone's way to get the engine going again, and that looks like we have some pit stops. So J-Turbo is in, McQuiz is in. They will be looking to undercut those around them, and we will expect to see everyone respond fairly quickly now. Dacuno in as well behind. The pit lane will get very busy in the next couple of laps. As the gap out front really has reduced, so is this Michelin Man's opportunity? Is this the time to make the stop? Get that jump before Coca comes in, get the fresh tyres on and really make the most of the outlap and see if track position is obtainable here for P1. Let's see through the final corner. Will Coca cover it off? Will he decide that now is the time to pit? No, they both continue, so the fight for the lead will continue on track with traffic coming out the pit lane, as Jazzman is the first of our leaders to come into the pits. Looking like that was nicely slowed down on the line, so no risk of a speeding penalty there from what I can see. A very tricky pit lane entry. As we have the rest of the top 10 continue, so Jazzman our only stopper from the top 10 for the time being. As Adam goes deep into turn 1 and just dips a couple of wheels onto the gravel, just pushing too hard in the lead up to this pit stops as the tyres start to wear. So where will Jazzman come back out with the traffic? Is it going to be clear air? It looks like it will be. That's Guido Christ. Guido Christ coming through, is that correct? Is Guido Christ a lap down? Surely he's a lap down, otherwise that is a very strong undercut from Guido Christ, but I'll have to wait and confirm as the timing screens they know Guido Christ is behind McQuiz, so that is a lapped Guido Christ. For a second I thought he had made the absolutely insane undercut from early in the race, but Jazzman out in clear air, so he'll be looking to have a quick lap here and gain that time to the cars in front, or more importantly not lose to the cars behind. As Tinus is in now along with Coca. Michelin Man continues, so no undercut for Michelin Man here. Coca makes the jump first. Michelin Man will need some strong laps here at the end of his stint, and then we'll be looking to try and get the run towards the end of the race. You would be surprised if Michelin Man can gain track position here. But where do Coca and Tinus come out in relation to Jazzman? Jazzman coming through the final couple of corners in the third sector here. Coca is out of his pit box, but it looks like this will be incredibly close, and that could be the lead for Jazzman. That is, it would have been the net race lead, but that is an off-track moment, and potentially just a little bit too aggressive. Did he think he could get to the apex before Coca? Quite hard to tell from the TV angle there, and that is potentially a missed opportunity. Undercut working wonders, but out onto the gravel, and Tinnis now tucked right in behind Jazzman again. Is that evidence of a poor pit stop for Coca Original? Does that mean Michelin Man could take the lead in this race? Is Michelin Man in this lap? Yes, he is. And again, nicely slowed down for the pit lane entry, as that's a more aggressive entry from Skov behind, but again looks to be all clean. So how will this shake out at the front? All very close, and Coca for now retaining the race lead with just Michelin Man to see what happens in that stop. Meanwhile, still some close battles on track. Slicker and Devil's Armpit here, both having completed their mandatory stops. Enjoying the fresh tyres, no doubt, while there is a bit more grip before those tyres start to overheat again and slide around. But Michelin Man has now completed that stop and rejoins the track. And that does look like Michelin Man has made it work, so you can only assume a poor stop for Coca, as Skov has got a stop go 30 for speeding in the pit lane. So as I saw, it was a more aggressive pit entry, and as it turns out, too aggressive. But Michelin Man has taken the net race lead here with a poor pit stop from Coca, and Coca drops to P2 on track, having led this race from lap 1 after that mistake from Tinnis. Jazzman in a net P3, Tinnis net P4, Skov for the time being P5, but that will be a big loss as he has to serve a stop go 30. But Coca on his tyres, which are up to temperature, not that it takes long. He has warmed up. Michelin Man just finishing his out lap, looks to have done enough to keep that position, and it will be tough work for Coca now to retake that race lead. As now all our remaining drivers bar Joe Powell into the pit lane, so Joe Powell will take the race lead for the time being, as he does have a little bit of lap traffic in the way. But that is cleanly out the way, and Joe Powell will carry on and look for as much time as he can find to try and fit out back into the pack as high up as possible. But the tyres will not be enjoying their run at this point, and I'm sure those that have pitted will likely be doing quicker lap times. Last lap from Joe Powell, a 42.6. McQuiz and J Turbo were those that he was battling, and a 41 for McQuiz, a 42.4 for J Turbo, so not horrendous pace from Joe Powell, but probably not quite what he needs. As Don Michelo is out on track again in P2. I'm sure he was in the pit lane though. So how has this happened? Has he stopped and failed to change tyres? He has come out just in front of Michelin Man, so that may have been a pit stop for fuel only, which will not cover the mandatory requirements, and that is not ideal for Don Michelo, as he will have to come back into the pits again. So disappointing there and risky on the pit entry again. Joe Powell also into the pit lane, so that is our final stops. With the exception of Matthew at the back, who again I'm sure has been into the pit lane, but still showing a mandatory pit stop yet to serve. Where do we have any battles on track? So CZ Adam has come out of the pits in between that battle between Devil's Armpit and Slicker. But the gaps all just too large for anyone to make any moves. As further up the road, that is Joe Powell coming out the pit lane, very close with J Turbo. But holds on to the position there, so that longer first stint from JP3 seemingly not losing him any positions. Or potentially one position to McQuiz. McQuiz obviously the early stopper, so will have had the most time to gain from that undercut, but it will be interesting to see how his tyres fare at the end of the race. Will the Ferraris start to gain back and make that a battle for P8? Up front we have all four leaders in close proximity. There you can see from on board with Tinnis, Michelin Man very much visible in turn one. Just 3.5 to 4, no, 3.5 seconds covers the top four. So all to play for, and the pace from Tinnis and Jazzman seems to be good after the first stint where Coca and Michelin Man did appear to have the pace to pull away. What will Coca's tyres manage in this second stint as that Porsche does wear down the tyres? Is that going to cause him an issue to hold on to the podium? Will it be an opportunity for Jazzman and Tinnis to make a move late on? 25 minutes left to go in this race. As now finally we have Don Michelo serving that pit stop, and Matthew as well, so everyone now having completed their pit stops. But once again, a disappointing race for Matthew, a disappointing race for Guido Christ, so no redemption from their struggles in Spa. Two drivers that would usually be in or around the top 10. As this race-long battle between J Turbo and Joe Powell has not ended. There is still less than a second between them, but just going to show how difficult a move is at a damp Zandvoort. These two indeed were very close in the Spa race as well before J Turbo with that late drive through for track limits. So this could be a season-long battle between these two Ferraris, showing very, very similar pace. As we jump back to the battle for the lead, but it does look like Michelin Man has the upper hand here. That gap over a second, and if the first stint is anything to go by, that delta will just increase in Michelin Man's favour in the McLaren the later on we go. as the driver's still really finding every opportunity to cool down the tyres. And very close behind with Jazz and Tinus. Tinus sniffing for any opportunity to head back into the podium positions. Pole position was not enough for him today. It was a tricky start and has had to fight back from dropping into 6th early on. Mistakes from Skov and Don Michaelo have brought Tinus back into this, and he will be fighting for that P3, but it will be very difficult to get anything done here without a mistake from Jazzman in front. However, Skov and Don Michaelo and the other two Lamborghinis that were in that top 6 group will be ruining their mistakes more. Skov speeding in the pit lane, Don Michaelo, as far as I can work out, failing to change tyres at his first pit stop and therefore having to stop again, now down in 14th and 19th position. As we join Devil's Armpit, and that is contact, that is with Skov, so that was incredibly close. We joined that one late, so very hard to say who was at fault, but Devil's Armpit fighting that car back around, as it looks like Skov is waiting, so maybe Skov aware that he has caused that one. We will not find that out just yet, but it's kind of Skov to wait whatever's happened there, but it does look like that is an admission of guilt, as Devil's Armpit really struggling to bring those tyres back into a happy working window. Any slide and sideways action here will just compound the issues of the tyre temperatures, so not ideal for either of these two drivers, dropping further backwards again. As they file into P16 and P17. Gifting positions to Slicker, Dennis and Bonival, as well as Dacuno there. As the gap between the front two remains around a second and a half. Tinus really the one pushing forward, trying to make a move here. That Ferrari strong through the final corner in the hands of Jazzman, and that will be another lap with no opportunity, just having to remain patient here, Tinus, and see whether a chance arises. As we have Guido Christ back into the pits again, so that is not a strong continuation of his race, and Pren in as well. So several drivers with issues multiple times in this race. I believe it was a disconnect for Pren earlier on, so disappointing for him, but continuing to have difficulties later into the race as well. As we join McQuiz, who appears to be closing in on Yip 242. Bold call from McQuiz to pit early, and so far it appears to have worked. Tyres holding up at this point, 22 minutes into his stint. Still 17 to go in this race, so there may well be a little bit of pain at the end for McQuiz on those tyres. but he'll be focused on the car in front at the moment, and that 1.5 second gap. Always easier to push forwards when you can see that gap visually in front. And visibly, Marquez will be buoyed by the fact that that car is a lot closer. Once again, the gap between Tinnis and Jazzman is less than half a second at the front of the field. We rejoin, but there really is nowhere through this first sector to overtake. The first opportunity after turn 1 comes in the slow hairpins through the middle of this lap. As we have Matthew off the track up ahead, so there are yellow flags. Nice and wide of the apex though, Matthew keeping very still, not causing any issues there. There's a very different line from the 3rd and 4th place drivers through that corner. Jazzman much deeper, later apex, but on the power early. Tinnis into the corner early, but then losing out on the exit, and again through the chicane, very different lines as the gap closes back in. Dennis close behind Bonneval here. I think that may have been Bonneval passing Dennis a short time ago. I believe they were the other way around earlier, so is that then going to be Bonneval pushing on to catch Slicker? Meanwhile, Skov, after his various incidents in the middle of this race, both the drive-through followed by the contact with Devil's Armpit, now closing in on Kuno. Will we see any on-track overtakes before the end of this race? It will be a brave effort from any of the drivers, as Skov collecting a bucket load of oversteer on the exit of that corner. Big lift on the entry to the final corner, but that is wide for Kuno, so in fact it's not Kuno. Skov is past Kuno, so I've missed that one somewhere. And that is a lapped car in front of Skov, so that pass had already taken place before we jumped on board. As Tinnis here right with Jazzman, and Jazzman is deep into the first corner. Can Tinnis cut back? And indeed, Jazzman too wide there, so there is a change for the final podium position. Jazzman very late on the brakes, trying to defend that on the inside, but it was too much, and Tinnis manages the cutback, and now into P3. Gap in front to Coca, 2 seconds, so does Tinnis have the pace in the Lamborghini to close up to Coca? He's been tucked in behind Jazzman very closely for the second stint of this race, and now he will want to prove the pace he's got in that car. Meanwhile, Bonneval still on a fight back to get through the field, is up behind Slicker now. Close across the line, but it would be a big lunge into turn 1, and early on the brakes for Bonneval, just playing it safe for now. Different lines through the apex, and Bonneval having to just get out of it slightly mid-corner. the opportunity looks like it may be there at some stage for Bonneval. Shown good pace through the practice and in the early stages of qualifying, not quite where he probably wanted to be on the grid, but is now all over the back of Slicker for 12th place. But a big wiggle from the back end there as he's really fighting hard. Got to be careful not to overdrive this one and make another mistake. Just seems to have more grip at the moment than the Lamborghini in front. As Slicker has a wide moment there, and that will invite the side-by-side into the final corner. And still they go side-by-side. Slicker has the inside and the optimum line, but Bonneval hangs it round the outside as Slicker understeers off the track. And does that invite Dennis up the inside for turn 1? So Slicker down 2 positions there, trying to hold on to 12th, ends up into 14th. So opportunistic from Dennis there, and that is P13 for Dennis. Meanwhile, up the front, the gaps still all between 1 and 2 seconds. Tinnis closing in ever so slightly on Coker, who's also managed to close in a little bit onto Michelin Man. So Coker not suffering that lap time loss quite the same way as he did in the first stint. Maybe just managed to keep those tyres a little bit cooler through the beginning of the second stint. But Tinnis still will be pushing hard and trying to put the pressure on. As it looks like we have a close battle for the final spot in the top 10 as well. Adam here closing in on J Turbo, who has dropped back from Joe Powell after the first half of their race where those two were absolutely glued together. Adam will be looking to close in just a couple more tenths, so that if there is any mistake from J Turbo at the end of this race, he can maybe make some form of move. As there is a big mistake from J Turbo, so that is the position gained for Adam, and J Turbo off, and I believe some contact with the wall, but should get away with that without any heavy damage. Gap behind to Bonneval is still a reasonable amount with just 8 minutes left to go in this race. J Turbo will just need to calm himself down after that and just concentrate on not hitting those curbs and white lines. Keep the car on the track. 10 seconds the gap behind still, and bring it home into P11 now. As we have the gaps throughout the mid-pack just starting to settle a little bit, but here is a move from Skov on Slicker, so that is a done deal at turn 1, and Slicker just sliding backwards a little bit at the end of this second stint. Gov obviously showing very strong pace early in this one, and will be disappointed that he is now battling for P14, maybe a P13 if he can catch Dennis before the end of this race, but only a few laps left now and opportunities will be fairly limited. Kuno here as well, just dropped off the back of that pack, with the leaders coming round not far behind, so Kuno just holding on as the final car on the lead lap, I believe. But what can Tinnis do here in the final couple of laps at the front, with the gap to Coca just over a second? Michelin Man at this point looks to have done enough for the win. Coca hasn't shown that he has the pace to come back at Michelin Man, even if the gap is still not huge. But Tinnis is the man on the move, up into P3 a few laps ago, has now pulled 3 seconds clear of Jazzman and is looking to put the pressure onto Coca for this final 3-4 laps. Further back as well, it looks like McQuiz is suffering a little bit potentially from his early pit stop, as Joe Powell is close behind for that P8 battle. McQuiz not able to continue his pursuit of Yip. We will keep a close eye on both of these. In fact, let's jump back on board with Joe Powell, as the gap between Tinnis and Coca for now is not close enough for a move. What can JP3 do here at the end of this one? As actually that gap from Yip to McQuiz has come down at the end of that lap, so these 3 cars converging in a battle for P7. Scott another 4 seconds up the road with a fairly lonely race, probably will not be involved here. We look backwards from McQuiz's car, and JP3 able to take the much tighter line and get the exit. Didn't think about a move up the inside, but surely there will be one opportunity before the end of this race. JP3 really seeming to have the better pace at this stage, and later on the brakes there, just able to keep the car tighter in those slow corners and get on the power earlier. Will he have the same run through the final corner? Is there a chance into turn 1 here? McQuiz looking to have as clean a run as possible, but surely JP3 will have an opportunity here. McQuiz will have to stay defensive, as indeed he does. JP3 goes to the outside, but McQuiz does well to get the car slowed down, and there is no opportunity for the cutback. But we will have to leave this battle, as the fight for P2 is just as close, and Coca fighting hard to keep his car on every apex and not give Tinnis any easy opportunity here. Tinnis has definitely had the pace of the top 4 in this second stint, and surely looking at this, you feel would have had a very strong chance at the win if he'd just managed to keep it on track at the start of lap 1. But P2 may not be beyond reach just yet, with 2 laps to go in this race. As Coker really struggling with the rear tyres on that Porsche, it seems. Just not the opportunity to get the power down early for Tinnis there. But he will be fully aware that Coker is struggling and wants to pile on as much pressure as possible, as again the grip just disappearing for Coker and just a slight defensive shape shown, but again that Porsche drifting with all 4 wheels and Tinnis able to get up to the inside. Coker just not really enough grip, but still has an opportunity to come back. Where is Tinnis? Has he still got the space? Tinnis should keep the inside into the chicane, but the Porsche straight line speed does take Coker ahead into the braking zone. And this is an incredibly hard fought battle for P2. I have to say, I thought that move was done. I thought Coker had nothing left to fight back with. That Porsche clearly struggling on the tyres as we go back in the run to the line for the penultimate time. Michelin Man goes on to his final lap, but Tinnis here up into turn 1, round the outside, will be forced the long way round. Coker is still there. Who will get the run into turn 3? Coker has the inside, but the narrow line. This is where Tinnis went wide earlier. Tinnis with the cutback to the outside of the hairpin. But once again, Coker with the racecraft to hold on. It will be only a couple more opportunities in this lap. And the battling here has cost them time. You can see Michelin Man suddenly disappearing up the road, and Jazzman not too far behind this battle if anything were to happen. But Tinnis fighting really hard, seeing if he can make anything stick. Coker defends again, and surely down into the chicane would be Tinnis's last opportunity. Needs the exit here, but Coker gets a decent run, and that may just be it. Tinnis too far back for any move here, and without a mistake for Coker now, it looks like he may have held on to this P2. Michelin Man comes across the line and takes the win, but it's all eyes behind Coker with just enough to hold on. Tinnis incredibly close across the line. Jazzman comes home in P4. And then we wait for Bleeding Sunrise, who is just past the Sector 2 split, so the gap to the top 4 rather large in this one. Bleeding Sunrise had a strong race at Spa. It's a strong result again, but a fairly lonely one. And I think, as with all of those in the 992 Porsche, the tyres really not enjoying these conditions. But Bleeding Sunrise will be happy with P5, taking the maximum I think he would have expected to get out of this race. And then a close finish behind for P6, 7, 8 and 9. Scott Fell hanging on for P6. Yip coming through in 7th. McQuiz holds on from JP3 for 8th. And then we wait for CZ Adam to come round and take that last spot in the top 10. Bonneval taking J Turbo on the last lap. J Turbo really moving backwards at the end, but holds on to P12, coming through behind Bonneval in 11th. Skov with a late few positions after the pit stop issue into 13th. Dennis Van Eyck, a decent 14th position for him. Slicker comes home in 15th. And the final car to come home on the lead lap will be Takuno, just cruising it round. And there we are, the final car across the line, 4P16. And what a race that was. Incredible on-track action, some overtakes in very difficult conditions, but very, very enjoyable to watch. And what a result for Michelin Man, taking advantage of the mistake from Tinnis early on, managing to jump Coker in the pit stops and get back into the lead of the race. I say back into the lead of the race, get into the lead of the race. But incredibly tight between the entire top four there. And actually, just looking at the results, I realised that what I missed on the line was that Tinnis did take the P2, so the line just a bit further up than I thought, and it seems that Coker ran out of fuel on the line and Tinnis getting that P2, so what a finish on the podium there. But Coker still managing to roll it across the line in front of Jazzman. We'll see potentially if either of those two is available for an interview. I'm not sure I will be able to get hold of Michelin Man, but we will see what we can do. So just waiting to see if we can get any of the top three in for an interview. Hello, welcome. Congratulations on the win. Just wanted to see if you were there for a quick interview. Looked to be an exciting race for you, close with Coker in the first stint, and managed. Yeah, Jazzman just seemed to struggle a little bit compared to. It looked like you, Coker and Tinnis on very similar pace. Obviously, Tinnis with the mistake at the start, just running out onto the gravel and the grass, managed to hold it together but dropped down to 6th at the start. And then the pit stop phase, I wondered whether you'd go for the undercut, but you stayed out. Coker Yeah, I really thought you'd lost the opportunity, but I think Coker must have had a slightly slow stop, and then from there, really just looked like you had it covered off. The gap obviously still close. Ah, there we go. That's what I missed then. But yeah, second stint as well, very close throughout. But and then just at the end, the gap for you got comfortable as Tinnis really putting the pressure on Coker at the end. But yeah, a strong. I think it looked like quite a few of the Ferraris not on the pace that we have seen at other tracks. So qualifying, he was there or thereabouts, but definitely race pace seemed a little bit off. Tinnis all over the back of him in the second stint and managing to get through. And then, yeah, Coker obviously strong pace at the start of the stints, but that Porsche absolutely ripping through the tyres at the end of the stints in these conditions. But I think everyone was. I think it was tough conditions for everyone out there, and yeah, half an hour was probably as much as anyone wanted to do on their tyres. Thank you for jumping in. Congratulations on the win, and we will speak to Tinnis as well and just see. You can jump out if you'd like, or you can speak to Tinnis as well. But yeah.
Yeah, well done on the win. Yeah, I had my tires not ready at all for the first stint. I was just so much struggling. No front end grip.
Well,
so yeah, nothing you can do.
We saw, obviously, he took pole, Tinnis, and didn't quite manage to hold on to it. Turn 3 on lap 1, not ideal for you, straight down into 6th position after lap 1, but managing to come back through, and the pace looked very strong.
Yeah, I think I had the pace to win today. Definitely looking at the second stint where I had my tire pressures pretty much okay. I mean, I was way stronger than Jasmine and Coca. But the first lap, I just broke, for my view, I think I broke nice and early. I turned in and it just went completely straight. There was just no front end, no turn and no nothing. Then I was behind some traffic. And yeah, at Zandvoort there's really not much you can do, especially not if your front tires are not ready. So
we saw very few genuine overtakes for position without any mistakes, but managing to get past Jazzman in that second stint, and then Coker was really struggling on his tyres by the looks of it. So
yeah, Coco was really struggling with his tires already in at the end of stint 1, so I knew I might have an opportunity at the end of stint 2. And he was also really close on fuel, and that's also the reason why I got P2. He just ran out of fuel on the straight.
I missed it at the time. I thought he was clear, and I thought he'd got you. I did notice him slow down on the line, but I assumed it was just after he'd crossed the line, and it wasn't until afterwards I spotted that you'd taken P2, which I thought you'd got with 2 laps to go. When you made that move, I didn't expect him to be able to come back at you, but he just kept the nose in.
Yeah, he kept the nose in, and the Porsches are just really strong in acceleration. Even when the tires are bad, he was just so strong accelerating out of a corner. So I had to leave him room because he was there with a nose. And in the end, yeah, it was good racing, and it turned out that a bit extra fuel can work out wonders.
Absolutely, but congratulations on the fight back through. Well done on the P2, and I'm sure that keeps you in the championship lead for now. But
no, I think we are equal on points now.
Actually, indeed, as I said that, it was Yeah.
I got a
So
first and a second,
both
and
of you have
Michelin Man
had
as
a
well.
first and a second, so
Yeah.
that will be into round 3 level on points.
Woohoo!
And yeah, very exciting going into the next race.
Looking forward to next week's battle.
Yeah, so but we will have to wait and see. But congratulations to you both, and we will see you next week for the race at Suzuka.
Yep. See you next
Right.
week. Thanks for streaming once again and broadcasting, Snicky.
No worries.
I'm sure you did a wonderful stream once again. I haven't looked at it yet.
Thanks, guys. We will find out, won't we? Right. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye.
So there we are. That is the end of round 2, and we will leave it there. Next week we'll be back for Suzuka. Less chance of rain, but it is possible another 1 hour race with the mandatory tyre change. And we will see who comes out on top there. Like we just said, Tinus and Michelin Man now level at the front of the championship, but there will be other drivers looking to fight back later in the season, so we will look forward to next week's race and hopefully continue this exciting racing. But I will leave it there and see you guys next week.